The Galactic Consensus had always believed in the balance of power. No species rose too high. No civilization expanded too aggressively. The universe was self-correcting, with every empire facing its eventual decay. Then, humanity arrived. They were discovered when a survey drone picked up erratic signals from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. At first, it seemed like a mistake. The planet was classified as ultralethal gravity stronger than normal, an atmosphere filled with corrosive oxygen, and a biosphere that had evolved exclusively through war. Predators everywhere. Parasitic organisms that infected hosts with nightmarish efficiency. Diseases that adapted faster than most civilizations could develop a cure. Yet somehow, humans had survived it all. The Galactic Consensus sent a first contact probe. It didn't return. They sent a reconnaissance ship. It sent back garbled messages before silence consumed it. A fleet was sent next, not to destroy, just to understand. But what they learned should have never been uncovered. Humanity didn't just survive Earth's horrors. They became them. They fought. Not just wars for resources, but for ideology, for revenge, for the sake of fighting itself. They adapted. No other species had evolved to survive every possible environment, from frozen wastelands to radioactive death zones. They experimented. Humans replaced their own flesh with metal, created intelligence that outmatched their own, and built weapons that burned entire atmospheres from planets. When the fleet finally reached Earth, they didn't find a single ruling government. No centralized empire. Instead, they found 7 billion apex predators, divided yet united in their endless thirst for progress. The Consensus panicked. No civilization had ever spread beyond their home system without external help. But humans had already launched ships toward their neighboring planets before even achieving faster-than-light travel. They didn't wait for technology. They forced it into existence. The order was given. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into the stars. A cleansing fleet was dispatched. It didn't come back. Reports filtered in through intercepted transmissions. The humans had captured the first wave. They hadn't just destroyed their enemies. They had dismantled them, taking their weapons, reverse engineering their technology, improving it. They laughed at the Consensus's most advanced war doctrines. They learned faster than any species should. And when they struck back, they didn't just attack. They hunted. They waited for the perfect moment, exploiting psychological weaknesses even the Consensus didn't know they had. They fought like creatures that had been at war since the moment they gained sentience. The Consensus sent more fleets. The humans let them land. Then they introduced them to a concept no other species had ever practiced: total war. Cities were reduced to rubble, not by alien weapons, but by humans themselves, denying the invaders any chance of victory. They poisoned their own worlds rather than let them be taken. They turned captured enemies against their own species, breaking them mentally, twisting them into weapons. They never surrendered. And worst of all, they enjoyed it. Humanity thrived in war. What the Consensus thought was a desperate struggle for survival was just another Tuesday for Earth's warlords. The aliens realized too late. The moment they made contact with humanity, the war had already been lost. Because the real nightmare wasn't just humanity's brutality. It was their patience. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were waiting for the right time to expand. And when they did, no species would be safe. The hunt had only just begun. The Galactic Consensus believed they had made a mistake. A horrible mistake. First contact was supposed to be simple: observe, classify, and determine whether integration or containment was necessary. But humanity had broken the model. They didn't fit the standard evolutionary trajectory. They weren't supposed to be possible. Every dominant species the consensus had encountered followed the same path: rise, expand, stabilize, stagnate. Eventually, they either collapsed under their own weight or were peacefully integrated into the wider galactic order. But humans? They were a deviation, a horrific, uncontrollable anomaly. And the worst part? They understood us. After the failure of the cleansing fleet, the consensus fell into chaos. No species had ever repelled an extermination force, let alone turned its own weapons against it. Worse still, the transmissions from Earth, encrypted, fragmented, yet unmistakably mocking, proved one terrifying fact. Humanity had learned to speak the consensus's languages in a matter of weeks. Their scientists dismantled our encryption protocols, turning our own communications against us. They intercepted distress calls, deciphered military strategies, and even sent their own messages back. Not pleas for peace. Threats. Warnings laced with grim amusement. They wanted the consensus to know that they were coming. The first human ships broke free of their solar system long before the consensus could prepare a counterstrike. They weren't elegant vessels of interstellar diplomacy. They were steel fortresses, built not for comfort, but for war. Their colonies weren't sprawling utopias. They were military strongholds. Every planet they touched was instantly transformed into a fortress world. Their war machines moved with eerie precision, utilizing tactics the consensus had never encountered before, methods that spoke of a civilization that had perfected the art of destruction over millennia. For the first time in its long history, the consensus understood what it meant to feel fear. The consensus had believed its numbers would be an advantage. After all, there were over 400 species under its banner, each contributing its own military expertise. They had united before. They had crushed rebellions before. But they had never fought an enemy like this. Every species in the consensus had evolved from creatures that hid from predators. Humans evolved from predators. They didn't fear conflict. They sought it out. For them, war wasn't a last resort, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to grow, to learn, to improve. The Consensus High Council knew they had to act quickly. A coalition of 50 fleets was dispatched to the first human colony outside their home system, a barren rock called Exohelion 3. It was supposed to be an easy victory. The planet had only been settled for a decade. No natural defenses. No infrastructure. But humans don't fight fair. By the time the consensus fleets arrived, the humans had already evacuated their civilians. What remained was a planet-sized battlefield. They had built underground bunkers, lined every structure with explosives, and even dug trenches, as if they were fighting an ancient war on their homeworld. And they didn't just defend, they adapted. Within days, they had learned the weaknesses of every species in the attacking force. They targeted the fragile avian tacticians first, knowing that their command structures would collapse without leadership. They ambushed the insectoid warriors in the coldest regions of the planet, where their exoskeletons became brittle. And then they broadcasted the carnage. They let the entire consensus watch as they turned the battlefield into a slaughterhouse. When the last consensus soldiers fell, the humans did not celebrate. They simply moved forward, already preparing their next invasion. A desperate attempt was made to sue for peace. A delegation was sent to negotiate, led by the wisest scholars and diplomats from the consensus. The humans met them. They listened. Then they laughed. Peace? The human envoy had asked, leaning forward, eyes filled with something ancient and primal. You don't understand, do you? We aren't here for war. War is just how we introduce ourselves. The delegation was sent back in pieces, each fragment carefully preserved in transparent containers, marked with human words that, when translated, simply read, "The hunt continues." The consensus was no longer fighting for dominance. They were fighting for survival. Every species under their banner began retreating to their home systems, fortifying planets that had known only peace for millennia. Ancient war doctrines were dusted off, new alliances were forged in desperation, and entire worlds were sacrificed just to slow them down. It didn't matter. Humanity was patient. They didn't rush. They studied their enemies, learning from each conflict, improving their strategies, refining their weapons. And then, when they were ready, they descended upon the galaxy like a force of nature. Entire star systems burned. The insectoid queens of Cthar tried to surrender. The humans bombarded their worlds from orbit until nothing remained but molten rock. The water-dwelling Znari fled into the depths of their ocean worlds. The humans boiled the seas. The reptilian Svarkend tried to hide in their underground hives. The humans filled them with fire. No one could escape. No one could hide. Because humans didn't just conquer. They hunted. The consensus finally realized the truth too late. They had always assumed that humanity's greatest strength was their adaptability. It wasn't. It was their memory. They remembered every war, every betrayal, every lesson. And unlike every other species, they passed that knowledge down, refining it, weaponizing it, ensuring that the next generation would always be deadlier than the last. The consensus had made the mistake of assuming they were the apex predators of the universe. But they weren't. They were just another entry in humanity's long history of hunting gods and monsters alike. The consensus's final act of desperation was a last-ditch effort to flee beyond the known galaxy, into the void where even the oldest empires had never ventured. They thought they could escape. They were wrong, because humans don't just pursue. They follow. They have always followed. Their ancestors hunted prey across endless tundras, across mountains, across oceans. They chased their enemies for days without rest, without pause, until the prey collapsed from sheer exhaustion. And now, they would chase the consensus into the abyss itself. No matter how far they ran, no matter where they tried to hide, humanity would find them. And when they did, the hunt would begin anew. The hunt never ends. The consensus could feel the noose tightening. It wasn't just their outer colonies falling anymore. Humanity had already begun erasing entire species from existence. Not just in war, systematically. For every planet they took, they didn't just conquer, they learned. They absorbed enemy technology. They reverse-engineered alien biology. They experimented on live captives, dissecting their minds, breaking their will. And worst of all, they improved. Each battle made them stronger. Each war honed them further. Each victory refined them into something even more terrifying. The consensus had never faced an enemy that evolved in real time. It was as if humanity was not a species, but a virus, infecting the galaxy, spreading, growing stronger with every failed attempt to stop them. And now, the consensus had only one option left. The final plan was desperate. Every surviving species in the consensus would abandon the known galaxy, flee into the cosmic dark, find sanctuary in uncharted space, beyond the edge of every known star map. It would take centuries, perhaps even millennia, but if it meant escaping them, it was worth it. So the fleets left, billions upon billions of beings packed into great arcships, departing into the black void, hoping, praying that humanity wouldn't follow. They would start over, build new civilizations, forget Earth, forget the monsters they had awakened. And for a time, they almost believed they had escaped. Until the first arcship went silent. "We found you." The message was broadcasted to every fleeing species at once. Not from the consensus, not from any known world, but from the void itself. It was human, and it was laughing. "We found you." The consensus fleets panicked. They changed course, trying to scatter in every direction. It didn't matter. One by one, the arcships vanished. Some were obliterated in an instant, reduced to dust before their passengers could even scream. Others had their life support systems disabled, forcing entire civilizations to suffocate in the dark. Some simply disappeared, dragged away into the void, never seen again. But the worst fate? The worst fate belonged to the ships that were left behind, because those ships were returned, drifting back toward the consensus's final strongholds, full of things, once alive, once conscious, now twisted, reshaped, converted into something else. A message, a warning, a promise. We found you. We are always watching. We will never stop. The final survivors gathered on a single planet, the last great stronghold of the consensus. A world that had been untouched for thousands of years. Its defenses were unbreakable. Its fleets were unmatched. It was a fortress designed to hold against any enemy. But not this enemy. Not them. For months, nothing happened. No attacks. No warnings. Just silence. And then, without any sound, without any warning, without even a detectable presence in space, they arrived. Not in ships. Not in fleets. But in something else. A black fog descending from the sky. At first, the defenders thought it was a weapon. Some kind of planet-killing biological agent. Then the screams started. The humans weren't killing anymore. They were changing things. Cities rotted from within. Buildings melted. The very ground twisted as if it were alive. The consensus warriors fought. They fired every weapon they had. It didn't matter, because humans had stopped being human. They had evolved past flesh, past metal, past war. They had become something else. Something that could not be reasoned with, could not be bargained with. Something that had been waiting for this moment since the dawn of its existence. One by one, the last defenders were taken. Their minds shattered. Their bodies dissolved. Their existence rewritten. And then, just as suddenly as they had arrived, the humans were gone. The last planet of the consensus remained. But it was empty, silent, haunted. The consensus no longer existed. The galaxy was quiet again. New species began to rise, slowly, cautiously, never speaking of what came before. But every so often, across the dark between the stars, a message would flicker through the ancient, forgotten networks. No one knew where it came from. No one could stop it. Just a simple phrase, whispered in the void. We found you. We never left. We are still here. Humanity had transcended war. They had become something else. Not an empire. Not a civilization. A force of nature. An unstoppable, eternal predator. And in the cold darkness of the universe, as new species rise and fall, they live in fear of only one thing. The day when the monsters of Earth return. Because they always return. And when they do, the hunt begins again.